What is up? I'm in that no man's land, not knowing whether it's actually streaming yet or not, but I believe it is. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another inspiring, I was about to say inspiring and inspirational TEM coaching chat. It will probably be neither, but TEM 248 dropped today. I'm Andrew Hitz from TEM Coaching. If you're lost, I released TEM 248 today, which is called "When Is It Good Enough," and that's all about the time between when something is good enough, whether it's a song that we've written or a book that we've written or a video we've made for YouTube, between when it's good enough to share and when we actually share it, and about how that can be really dangerous, and talks about about how we need to keep our eyes on the fact that it's probably good enough before we think it is, and we need to just ship it and not be afraid and then move on to the next thing. I go into it in detail, but what I wanted to share quickly here on this stream was the quote that I found for this TEM episode. Every TEM episode I have a quote at the end, which I then wax poetic on. And this one is from Brené Brown. And her quote, she's so awesome. Her quote was, "Don't try to win over the haters. You are not a jackass whisperer," which is just amazing. I really don't like it when someone says that if you're not a fan of fill in the blank band or artist or something, that anyone that doesn't like them is labeled a hater. I think that that's like overly simplistic, and it's lazy. Like, it's okay if if you don't like fish, doesn't mean you're a hater. And you might hate fish. There's a lot to hate there if you don't like it. But anyway, I digress. You're not automatically a hater just because you don't like something, but I also don't think that's not how Brené Brown is using that here. There is a type of person who I think that she was referring to, if I may be so bold to speak for her. There's a type of person who doesn't have the courage to share anything with the world, and they just go around crapping on everybody else who actually does have the courage to share things. The people who say, "Oh God, just what we need, another open mic night at a coffee shop so that a bunch of singer-songwriters," in sarcastic air quotes, can go and sing songs about getting their hearts broken, etc. That person is not going to be won over. That jackass, as Brené Brown is saying, is not going to be won over by you just writing a little bit of a better song or making it just a little bit more interesting, that's not it. They're pissed that you have the courage to share the thing in the first place, because I don't. I've been in a lot of situations artistically that have required a lot of courage. I have never written a song and written lyrics and about personal experiences, and then gotten up in front of even a room full of 8 people who are strangers and said, "Here's a song I wrote. You might think it sucks, but here you go," and then played it and sang my heart out. I can't fathom how much courage that takes. Somebody who doesn't have the courage to share anything would feel better about that if you didn't have the courage to share anything either. And so you're not going to win that person over. That's why, as Brené Brown says, you shouldn't try to win over the haters, because they actually have an issue with themselves. They don't actually have an issue with you. And so I think it's really important, because I know that I have a human tendency to want to win people over. Like, when somebody, it's a very popular thing to say, like, "Oh God, everybody hosts a podcast nowadays." And they're not wrong. There's lots and lots of, that's actually the cool thing about the medium, is that you don't have to get approved by one of the 5 major publishers out of New York City, like you did not too long ago, to have a book that got read by more than just a couple of people. That anyone can host a podcast and can just start it and then broadcast it all over the world. But you're never going to convince somebody who hates all podcasts or decides all podcasts that they should like podcasts, because it's like, well, wait a minute, do you like books? It's like, yeah, well, what if it's a podcast? What if it's an interview with some expert who wrote a book, and they're just providing a little, you wouldn't want to hear from that author. That same person would want to maybe be in the room or watch a YouTube video of that author going more in depth on the book, but they don't want to hear a podcast just because they're anti-podcast. That's fine. I need to remind myself constantly that it's not my job to convince anybody that they should like any particular medium, or that they, and certainly not that they should like what I put out. So there are people who love TEM in spite of me. There are some people, I've heard from them. You have to be, just trust me. There's some people who love TEM because of me. And those are the people that I have to, I don't want to make it sound like I've heard from thousands of those people, but the point is that I just have to speak to the audience that is here to hear what I have to offer, and to not try and convince anyone that that what I'm doing is worthwhile, or that the format I'm doing it in, or any of the above. I'm not a jackass whisperer. Neither are you. So don't try and win over the haters. Brene Brown is a lot smarter than me. And so I look to people like her for advice. And so that is the advice that I'm giving myself. And I'm publicly giving that to myself in case you find that useful. If you want to find out more about TEM coaching, you can head to tem.fm. Also, the show notes. By the way, this episode 248 that came out today is like kind of a continuation of TEM 244, which was the most dangerous step of the creative process. It's always right at the end. Stephen Pressfield has talked about this a lot. It's like when we sabotage ourselves. And so yeah, I go into detail about that, because that's a trap that I can absolutely fall into. And then once I heard, again, people smarter than me, like Stephen Pressfield, Seth Godin, Brené Brown, talk about it, I'm like, oh, it's not actually just this tuba player. It's like, it's a common thing. So right before we share it is when we start getting real hypercritical, because we're afraid to share it. And it's just, and I can share with you, if you are saying to share a lot, I can share with you that if you are new at sharing things with the world and putting yourself out there, it gets easier. You just got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. Got to keep doing it. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderfully productive week. And if there's ever anything you want on one of these, or on a TEM episode or something like that for me to cover, please shoot me an email, andrew@tem.fm. I love to hear from people. And that's it. And if you hate the podcast, you can, I've heard from those people too. Believe it or not, I get all kinds of email. Anyway, put yourself out there, and it's coming. So have a wonderful week, and I'll see y'all next week.